My beloved child, something has changed around you, and deep within your heart, you may already sense it. There is a presence you cannot easily explain, a thought that returns when everything becomes quiet, a feeling that appears without warning and leaves you wondering why one particular person has suddenly become so difficult to forget. You may have tried to dismiss it. You may have told yourself that it is nothing, that it will pass, that perhaps your mind is simply creating a story where there is no story at all. But what if that feeling is pointing towards something you have not yet discovered? Don't skip, because the next moments may reveal why this connection feels different from anything you have experienced before. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the truth may be closer than you realize. There are moments in life when someone enters your awareness so unexpectedly that even ordinary days begin to feel different. A familiar song suddenly carries a new meaning. A simple conversation stays in your thoughts long after it ends. A glance that lasted only a second somehow becomes a memory you replay again and again. You cannot explain why your attention keeps returning to them, but something inside you keeps asking the same question: why this person? Why now? Why does their presence create a feeling that seems stronger than it should? And here is where the mystery begins. Sometimes the most powerful changes do not announce themselves with dramatic signs. They arrive quietly, through a feeling, a moment, an unexpected realization, or a person who makes your heart notice something it had been ignoring. Perhaps this person has already noticed you more than you think. Perhaps there have been tiny moments you overlooked because they seemed insignificant at the time. A pause in conversation. A different expression in their eyes. A moment when they seemed to search for the right words around you. A sudden nervousness that appeared when you were nearby. A reason to remain in the same place a little longer. None of these moments alone can prove anything, and you should never force meaning onto another person's actions. But when several small moments begin forming a pattern, curiosity naturally grows. Don't skip, because what looks like a coincidence at first can sometimes become the beginning of a realization that changes the way you see everything that came before. Imagine for a moment that the person who has caught your attention has also been carrying an unspoken question. Imagine that they have wondered whether you noticed the subtle changes in their behavior. Imagine that they have wanted to understand why your presence affects them differently from everyone else. You may think you are the only one feeling this strange tension, this quiet anticipation, this sense that something remains unfinished between you. But perhaps the story is not as one-sided as you assumed. Perhaps both of you have been standing at the edge of the same realization without knowing whether to take the next step. Stay till the end, because there is a deeper layer to this story, and it has everything to do with the reason this person seems to have appeared in your thoughts at exactly this point in your life. There is something fascinating about emotional connections. They can make time behave differently. A few seconds can feel unforgettable, while an entire afternoon can disappear without leaving a trace. When someone truly captures your attention, your mind begins collecting details automatically. You remember their voice. You remember the way they smiled. You remember something they said that nobody else would consider important. You remember where they were standing, what the atmosphere felt like, and even the emotion you experienced in that moment. It is as if your mind quietly placed a bookmark inside an ordinary day and wrote, "Pay attention to this." But why? What makes one person stand apart from everyone else? Maybe it is not simply their appearance. Maybe it is the feeling of recognition that happens when two personalities seem to understand something about each other without needing many words. Maybe their presence makes you feel seen in a way you did not expect. Maybe they bring out a version of you that has been quiet for a long time. And that is why this story may be more significant than a simple attraction. It may be about discovery. It may be about realizing what kind of connection your heart has been searching for without knowing how to describe it. Don't skip, because there is still something you need to understand about why this person has become so difficult to ignore. Sometimes we assume that intense feelings must immediately lead somewhere. We want answers. We want certainty. We want to know whether the other person feels the same way, whether the future will bring you closer, whether a conversation will happen, whether a hidden feeling will finally become visible. But the most powerful part of a developing connection is often the space before the answer. That space creates anticipation. It makes every small interaction feel meaningful. It makes you wonder what could happen next. And perhaps that is exactly where you are now, standing in a moment where nothing has been fully revealed, yet everything feels possible. There may be a conversation waiting to happen. There may be an opportunity that neither of you has recognized yet. There may be a moment when one honest sentence changes the entire atmosphere. But until that moment arrives, there is something important to remember: never confuse hope with certainty. Let the connection unfold naturally. Let action speak louder than imagination. Let respect, honesty, and mutual interest guide whatever happens next. Because if this feeling is genuine, it will not need to be forced. It will become clearer with time. And if there is something real waiting beneath the surface, you will not have to chase every tiny sign to prove it. The truth will eventually become easier to see. Stay till the end, because the most surprising part may not be what this person feels about you. It may be what their appearance in your life is teaching you about yourself. Think about the version of you that existed before this person caught your attention. Perhaps you were moving through your days without expecting anything unusual. You had your routines, your responsibilities, your plans, and your familiar thoughts. Then suddenly, someone appeared, and something shifted. You started noticing emotions you had forgotten existed. You became more aware of the way you speak, the way you look at people, the things you want from a meaningful connection. Perhaps you began asking yourself whether you are ready to open your heart again. Perhaps you realized that beneath all your confidence, there is still a part of you that wants to be understood deeply. And perhaps that is the revelation you were not expecting. Sometimes another person becomes important not because they immediately become part of our future, but because they awaken a part of us that had been waiting to be noticed. They remind us that our heart is still capable of excitement. They remind us that life can still surprise us. They remind us that not every chapter can be planned in advance. Something huge is waiting for you, but it may not arrive in the form you imagined. It may begin with one conversation, one honest moment, one unexpected message, one meeting that lasts longer than planned, or one simple question that finally breaks the silence. You may not know when it will happen, and that uncertainty is precisely what makes the story so compelling. There is a reason your attention keeps returning to this person, but only time and genuine interaction can reveal what that reason truly means. So do not rush the ending before the story has had a chance to unfold. There is another possibility you should consider. What if the person who has caught your eye is also trying to understand you? What if they have noticed your presence, your expressions, your energy, and the small changes in your behavior? What if they have wondered whether you are simply being friendly or whether there is something more behind the way you look at them? Imagine two people both waiting for clarity, each assuming the other may not feel the same way. That situation can create an invisible distance even when the emotional connection feels surprisingly close. Neither person wants to misread the moment. Neither wants to move too quickly. So both remain quiet, watching, wondering, waiting. And the longer the silence continues, the larger the mystery becomes. Don't skip, because this is where many unexpected stories begin, not with a dramatic confession, but with two people slowly realizing that they have been noticing each other all along. Perhaps the next sign will be subtle. Perhaps they will find a reason to speak with you. Perhaps their attention will linger a little longer. Perhaps they will remember something you said weeks ago. Perhaps they will become more open around you. But again, do not turn every gesture into a promise. The beauty of a real connection is that it does not require fantasy to make it meaningful. You can appreciate the possibility while still allowing reality to reveal itself. And when reality finally speaks, it can be far more powerful than anything you imagined. There is also something else happening beneath your curiosity. You may be wondering whether you should make a move, whether you should wait, whether you should reveal your feelings, or whether you should protect your heart and remain silent. But perhaps the first question is not what you should do about them. Perhaps the first question is what you truly want. Do you want attention, or do you want understanding? Do you want excitement, or do you want a connection built on trust? Do you want a moment, or do you want something that can grow naturally? Those questions matter because attraction can be powerful. But clarity gives that attraction direction. If this person genuinely matters to you, then patience can be stronger than pressure. Let the connection breathe. Let conversations become deeper naturally. Let both people have room to show their intentions through consistent actions. Something huge is waiting for you, but you do not need to force it into existence. Sometimes the greatest surprises happen when you stop trying to control every detail and simply remain present enough to recognize the opportunity when it arrives. And perhaps that opportunity is closer than you think. Maybe the person who caught your eye has already changed the way you see your own future. Maybe you have started imagining conversations that have not happened yet. Maybe you have wondered what it would be like to hear them say something you have secretly hoped to hear. Maybe you have pictured a moment when the uncertainty disappears and everything suddenly makes sense. Those thoughts can feel incredibly real, but remember that imagination is not evidence. The strongest story is not the one we invent inside our minds, it is the one reality gradually confirms. So keep your heart open, but keep your judgment clear. Notice what is real. Notice what is consistent. Notice whether the connection brings peace as well as excitement. Because when someone truly belongs in your life, their presence should not require you to constantly question your worth. You should not have to become someone else to earn their attention. You should not have to compete for basic respect. The right connection allows two people to meet as they are, without pretending. And if this person is meant to become important in your journey, the next chapter will reveal itself through mutual effort, honest communication, and moments that become impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. Stay till the end, because one final thought may completely change the way you interpret this mysterious feeling. Maybe the reason this person makes you feel breathless is not because they have power over your heart, but because their presence is showing you that your heart is alive, awake, and ready to experience something meaningful again. That realization alone can be extraordinary. You may have believed that you had become too cautious, too busy, too experienced, or too tired to feel this kind of anticipation again. Then one person appears, and suddenly the world seems a little brighter. You begin looking forward to ordinary moments. You begin noticing possibilities. You begin wondering whether the next conversation could contain a clue. And that is where the suspense becomes real, because neither you nor the audience knows what the next chapter will reveal. Maybe this person will eventually tell you something you never expected. Maybe they will finally explain why they have been acting differently around you. Maybe an ordinary encounter will become the moment that changes everything. Or maybe the greatest revelation will be that this feeling was never asking you to chase another person at all. Maybe it was asking you to become brave enough to recognize what your heart genuinely values. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, and the biggest surprise may be that the story has only just begun. The person who caught your eye may have entered your life quietly, but the questions they awakened are anything but small. Why did you notice them? Why did their presence stay with you? Why does one glance feel different from 100 others? Why do you sense that something has not yet been said? These questions may remain unanswered for a little longer. But that does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes the most important moments are being prepared quietly before they become visible. So pay attention to the next conversation. Pay attention to the next unexpected meeting. Pay attention to the moment when the atmosphere suddenly changes. Because somewhere between uncertainty and revelation, between curiosity and courage, between what you think you know and what you are about to discover, a new chapter may be waiting. And when that chapter finally opens, you may look back at this exact moment and realize that the feeling you could not explain was never random. It was the beginning of a story you had not yet learned how to read. There is a moment coming that you may not recognize at first, because it will look completely ordinary from the outside, yet something inside you will know that it is different. The person who has caught your eye may say something simple, perhaps only a few words, but the way they say them could make you pause and wonder whether there was a deeper meaning hidden beneath the surface. Don't skip, because this is where the quiet mystery begins to become impossible to ignore. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the next part of this story may explain why your attention keeps returning to this one person. Think about how unusual it is that among countless faces, countless voices, and countless people moving through your world, one person somehow becomes unforgettable. You may not have planned it. You may not have expected it. You may not even understand when it happened. One day they were simply someone you noticed, and then suddenly their presence started occupying a small corner of your thoughts. You begin wondering whether they will appear. You notice when they are absent. You remember little details about them without trying. And when they are near, something inside you becomes more alert, as though your heart is quietly saying, "Pay attention." That feeling can be powerful, but it can also be mysterious, because attraction does not always arrive with an explanation. Sometimes it begins with curiosity. Sometimes it begins with admiration. Sometimes it begins because someone carries a quality that feels strangely familiar. And sometimes it begins because they awaken an emotion you thought you had already left behind. Whatever the reason, do not rush to define it. Let the story breathe. Let the next moments reveal what your first impression could never tell you. Because the person who caught your eye may have a story of their own, and you may know far less about what is happening in their heart than you imagine, something may already be shifting beneath the surface, and the most surprising part is that neither of you may be fully aware of it yet. Imagine two people who repeatedly find themselves noticing one another, each quietly wondering whether the other has noticed too. A glance becomes a question. A smile becomes a possibility. A short conversation becomes something remembered much longer than expected. Neither person wants to assume too much, so both remain careful. And that carefulness creates suspense. What if they are waiting for the same sign you are waiting for? What if they have also wondered whether there is something special about the connection? What if they have noticed the way your expression changes when they enter the room? These possibilities can make an ordinary interaction feel extraordinary. But remember, the goal is not to turn every tiny moment into proof. The goal is to remain open enough to notice genuine mutual interest when it appears. Stay till the end, because the strongest revelation is not about guessing someone's thoughts. It is about recognizing what happens when two people begin moving from uncertainty toward clarity. And clarity has a way of changing everything. It can turn nervous silence into an honest conversation. It can transform curiosity into understanding. It can reveal that what seemed like imagination was actually the beginning of something meaningful, or it can gently show you that your heart was searching for meaning where there was only a passing moment. Either way, truth is better than uncertainty, and the journey toward that truth can be one of the most unforgettable parts of the story. Here is the part you may not expect. The person who makes you feel breathless may not realize how strongly their presence affects you. They may look at you and see someone calm, composed, and completely unaware of the emotional storm happening inside. They may have no idea that a simple smile from them can remain in your thoughts for hours. They may not know that you remember conversations they have already forgotten. They may not understand that when they speak, you listen a little more carefully than you listen to everyone else. And perhaps they are doing something similar. Perhaps they are hiding their own uncertainty behind ordinary behavior. Perhaps they have wondered whether you are simply being kind or whether your attention means something more. This is why real emotional connections can become so fascinating. Both people may be waiting for clarity while simultaneously being afraid of misreading the situation. One person waits for the other to make the first move, while the other is doing exactly the same thing. And suddenly, days pass, opportunities appear and disappear, and the mystery grows. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, but remember this: you do not need to force a revelation. A genuine connection becomes clearer through time. Consistency, respect, and honest communication. If something meaningful is developing, it will not depend entirely on one perfect moment. It will show itself through a pattern of small truths. You may also be wondering why this particular person has appeared in your life at this particular time. That question deserves more attention than you might think. People can enter our lives during periods when we are changing internally, even when we do not realize that we are changing. Perhaps you have become more selective about who you allow close to you. Perhaps you have learned from past experiences and now recognize qualities you once overlooked. Perhaps you are beginning to understand what genuine respect feels like. Maybe this person has not simply caught your eye, maybe they have revealed something about the kind of connection you now want. That is a powerful realization. Because sometimes another person does not arrive to give you an immediate answer. They arrive to ask you a question. What do you truly want? What kind of person makes you feel peaceful and inspired at the same time? What kind of communication makes you feel valued rather than uncertain? What kind of relationship allows both people to remain themselves while growing together? These questions can change your perspective completely. And perhaps that is why this feeling seems so intense. It is not only about them. It is also about the version of yourself that begins to emerge when you realize you are capable of feeling deeply again. Now listen carefully, because the next part may be the one you remember later. There may come a moment when this person unexpectedly reveals something about themselves that changes the way you see them. It could be a personal dream, a hidden talent, a thoughtful opinion, a vulnerable story, or simply a side of their personality you had never noticed before. And suddenly, the attraction that began with appearance or curiosity becomes something deeper, understanding. You realize that the person you noticed from a distance is far more complex than the image you created in your mind. This is where genuine connection begins to separate itself from fantasy. If you believe me, type yes and subscribe.